Please, sir, may I have some cheaper cards?
No, only more expensive cards. Get out of here. You aren't even from this movie. You're from Oliver Twist.
Please, sir, no one will notice. Oliver Twist is more of an English phenomenon. He's barely part of the French lexicon.
Bah, humbug.
Besides, you spent the entire last video calling Demeter, god of fertility, Dimitri. You don't care about these sorts of things.
Ah, maybe you are right. Alright then, since it's Christmas, cheaper cards for everyone!
God bless us, everyone. What's up, folks? Elio here with another video for the Ultra Trading Card Game. This time, I'm playing not my own concoction, but a spicy brew of a new friend, Freeloader, ironic to his name, as today I will be freeloading off of him to show off Ebenezer Rin. The deck is based around trying to abuse Ebenezer Scrooge. The Muna version brings the opposite of the Orders version, discounting cards from reserve by one for all players. So, with Rin, our goal is to try to get a reserve full of cards so that we can easily win the round and potentially keep our threats around. Rare Harvest is key here. From your reserve, you are getting 2 cards for only 1 mana with Scrooge. This alone provides an engine for Scrooge to go to work. With all this, we need impactful plays. Persephone, Daughter, and Aloe are all great cards that can become even better when discounted. Persephone also pushes our Rin triggers, Daughter is the biggest body for the cost you can find, and Aloe fills up the water while filling up the reserve. I'll note that Freeloader does run 3 Daughters, but I replaced 2 of those with Rare Mowgli. The Mowgli doesn't benefit from Scrooge, but he helps every other part of the game plan, including keeping Scrooge around. In combination with Muna Druid and Muna Caregiver, we have all we need to keep Scrooge going or keep our threats going into the next round. Floor Tent lets us protect those anchored cards while also filling up the reserve for more fuel. And anchored isn't the only tool available to us. We can also sleep things. Beauty Sleep can go both ways, but Snoozer Shroom and Ebenezer Scrooge can use their support abilities to keep things around when we won't benefit from their stats. And this happens a lot. Finally, some odd roundabouts. Muna Merchant, good from reserve. I would love to find room for rare Muna Merchant here as a 1 mana 3/2/0 resupply. It's incredible. Lost in the Woods provides us some generic protection and interaction, and Spindle Bastion provides us protection against our opponent's interaction. I'm using my own uniques, though I note that Freeloader looks like they go after anchor support uniques, and I continue that same theme with this Uzumboshi. If I have a Spindle Bastion out, it's fantastic, and if I don't, well, it goes into the mana. And this Capellia is sick in Rin, anchoring units at the end of turn that our opponent didn't expect. And finally, my Chiron does a Muna Merchant plus Saskia impersonation. That's the deck. Let's jump into some games. Okay, up first here against Arjun. Now, I normally like to do Scrooge combos later on, when I have a lot of mana, 6 or 7, and I can keep the Scrooge around, play a lot of things, and really have some flexibility. So I'm not always pushing to keep this combo early on or try to push this out early on. That being said, the 3 cards on the left here seem like a nice little turn 1 where we can play a Mowgli out, likely win the lane. If we do, we get to put Harvest into the reserve, and we can start setting up a Scrooge turn going forward. The common Muna Merchant often ends up in reserve for me, but I do like the Sneezer Shroom and the other Mowgli. I could definitely see keeping both Mowglis and the Scrooge or Sneezer Shroom. We do find ourselves winning the left lane on the first day. We go ahead and draw up. We'll keep our original plan of putting the Harvest into the reserve. Their Keylon Elemental is actually pretty nice for us because it does not really fight over grass very well, which is something that we're really trying to push with Rin as our hero. Here, I've got a little bit of good cards available to me. I've got 2 anchor effects in these things, and Harvest can dig for more, so I'm going to put back the Muna Caregiver. But what we do will likely depend on what our opponent does. They do open up with a Frozen Reprocessor, which is a little scary. I think we have 2 options here. We could Persephone on the right, and then win the lane, use Rin's ability to put Capellia in on the left side, freezing the Persephone on the right, putting us into a really strong position for the next turn. I think that this is definitely what I should have done. It is not, however, what I did. I instead decide to make things interesting and play the Scrooge on the right and start anchoring that around so that I can keep it around for the next turn and have my own aggressive Scrooge gameplay. With that, I go ahead and use the Harvest to try to dig for more anchored effects going forward to the subsequent turns. And we do find a Lost in the Woods, which is going to be really great against this Frozen Reprocessor, which is kind of a problem for us, for him to have full reserves with our Scrooge effect. Plus, Arjun just loves this Reprocessor, so I'd love to get rid of this. So I do feel happy that I kind of dug a bit and found some interaction here. And we can use the Muna Caregiver, the worst of these two coming into play, to give our Scrooge anchored, win this turn, and we'll put something into the reserve that we'll have to end up discarding. That ends up being a duplicative Persephone. Here, we get rid of the common Muna Merchant. Again, it does often end up in mana because that backside is awkward even when discounted by Scrooge. Again, would love to find room for the rare version here. Here, before they do any sneaky interaction and to give us a chance to see what they plan on doing before we commit power to the board, I'm just going to immediately Lost in the Woods this Frozen Reprocessor. This also kind of awkwardly makes it so that this may end up causing them to overflow on their reserve this turn, though that's less likely with Arjun's ability to just use reserve cards to get things to stick around. And what they actually play is a Quetzalcoatl that feels like it can be pretty good against our deck. Luckily, the Rin ability triggers at a time that doesn't make this a problem. But things like Aloe and Harvest and Floral Tent are all pretty bad into the Quetzalcoatl. That being said, we're up a lane, and we can try to just continue to trade 1-for-1 going on for a bit, taking on the right lane so that we push to an endgame where we get through his Quetzalcoatls, where he's not getting benefit from them anymore, and we're still up a lane. So we're going to win this right lane. He's used some cards to do here. And at the end of the turn, we can actually discard this Capelia, not discard, put it into the reserve with Rin, then put it back into play, and we'll keep the Scrooge around for a little bit longer, especially since his reserve is getting a little light, and ours is still not looking bad. I don't feel the need to keep Spindle against Arjun. In general, I like to get rid of it versus Tasia decks. Beauty Sleep is like the most common thing that it's kind of good against, but Arjun often runs less interaction, and it's a pretty easy mana choice for us here. What we can start doing, though, is playing out our Aloe Vera, which, because this Quetz is going into the reserve this turn, we'll start our turn, resupply, and he won't get any soldiers out of it. And it'll also, next turn, be blocking them on the water, though it's unlikely to put us in a position to advance over here right now. I'm happy to see these Frozen Reprocessors not feeling like they have the luxury of spending mana doing nothing to do them. So they're discounting or discarding these, plays another Quetzalcoatl, which I'm a lot less happy about, onto the right side. I'll probably try to sleep that this turn, depending on what he follows up with. But I'll start by playing Muna Merchant on left, and I will threaten to advance on the left this turn. They play the Keelan Elemental, and we can Beauty Sleep on the right, just in case they do have a 1-mana play. It's not strictly necessary. We could keep the Beauty Sleep in hand, but because it's anchored, it also doesn't really have a downside from board position, and we're getting lots of cards from our future Aloe and Muna Merchants and everything else here. So we Beauty Sleep this. This kind of forces them to pass even if they did have a 1-drop, and we use the Mowgli to keep around the Scrooge for another turn. Beauty Sleep on the back end is often pretty expensive for Tasia decks, but it costing 2 with Scrooge feels a lot nicer, which is another little benefit. We're now up 2 lanes here. I can put this Muna Druid into reserve, planning on using it to anchor the Aloe Vera or the Scrooge, depending on what makes the most sense for us. They make these orders recruits, but they don't do anything right now. And we can actually discard the Floral Tent, and even though I talked about the great benefits of a discounted sleep, I'm going to keep the characters around so that we can put power onto the board. Here, the Isumboshi is only really good with Spindle Bastion, which we don't have, so we'll put that into mana. And we can start by digging a little bit with the Moon Merchant before he gets his second Quetzalcoatl out, because after that I am not going to want to resupply. But we can put it on the right since its power does not do anything on the left in this water-heavy expedition. And they make their Quetz left, which means I'm definitely not playing Harvest this turn. I will go ahead and put out one of the cards they know about, though, in the Aloe Vera, which only costs us 3 mana to both play and anchor due to the discount from Scrooge. They play a Daughter on the right. We're pretty comfortably winning this left lane right now, but we don't have the power to be able to push on the right lane. We could play Moonadrid out, but that's only going to get us to 7 mountain, and it would stop them on the forest, but it's a pretty precarious position to be stopping them there. So I go ahead and Beauty Sleep the Daughter, which sets them back a lot. And hopefully will at least be enough for us to win the right lane. Not a lot out of Tasia's putting power in 2 lanes right here. But Kitsune is definitely the thing that does it, which with these 2 Quetzalcoatls is just a ton of power this turn, and is exactly what they needed to actually get a double advance here. Well, sorry, not a double advance. We are still blocking them on forest, which is one of the benefits of sleeping this Daughter. They get a single advance, and we can go ahead and Moonadrid to keep around a Aloe Vera this time. They were running lighter on resources, so they couldn't afford to anchor the Quetz. So us going into the next turn with double Aloe Vera, we're in this position again where we can just push one side of the board, and as long as we're winning that side, we'll win the game. Happy to be trading 1 for 1. Here, there is still another Quetz. I don't need 2 harvests for sure, so I'll get rid of one of those. We see our third Aloe Vera, which is likely just going to help us with our push left plan. They play a Machine in the Ice with this Floral Tent, which just removes the anchoring from it since it would normally go to reserve, which is pretty funny. Now, it does signal that they're trying to fight over this water here. I play a bit of a stall play in the Mowgli on the right. I don't know how I feel about that. I think that what I should be doing is just spending this turn going hard on the left. As said, I'm in a position where I can just force left, and that's going to be enough to win the game. And so I think against most things that Arjun's going to be putting out, that's the right path. But I stall a little bit and put something that only blocks him on the right and isn't going to be able to advance myself because I can't afford this Persephone. But they play out some anchor effects, play their Quetzalcoatl, and they have 1 card left in hand, which to me does signal that it's likely well, it's unclear what it is. They're 4 power from stopping us on the water, but they are double advancing right now. And so we need to do something to either block them on the forest here or here. A Daughter from them could mean that they both advance and block here. And so I don't want to try to commit to the left lane. I'd rather take our trade here and try to block them on the right. So with that, I actually am forced to play the Moonadrid on the right. And what they do have is Daughter. So we do at least stop them on the right. And because we're losing this lane now, we can just sleep another one of these Aloe Veras and lose 1 lane here, but at least go into the next turn with still a bunch of Aloe Vera and resupply value here. Again, if I had used the Daughter that last turn on the left and just forced left, then we'd be in a slightly better position where we'd be 1 away and they'd still be 2 away. They would have some of these cards in hand, though, to put pressure on us. We put the Moonadrid into mana here, and we open up with the Chiron on the right, which can start to pressure the colors here, but not super well. But really, we're just trying to resupply and see what other value we have. But I think similar to the last turn, we should be trying to use these turns to ensure we're winning left and trying to keep our Aloe Veras around so that we're going into the next turns with power. We're no longer in a position where we can trade 1 for 1 and guaranteed win, but we can go into the tiebreaker with a ton of power on board. Even though Arjun has its built-in anchoring, we have so many cards available to us right now that it's likely that we can push that to an advantage. I do accidentally mess up the order in this Chiron, by the way. You can choose how you want, and you should always choose to resupply first when you have some sort of effect that is resupply and discard something from reserve in order to get its benefit. Now I'm looking to play this tent to start protecting this boosted aloe and these other things, so I'll go ahead and immediately anchor this aloe vera before playing the tent so that it is protected. They go ahead and anchor their third Quetzalcoatl. And for me, I'm looking at this Lost in the Woods as something that I could potentially get rid of this daughter or make the Quetzalcoatl not stick around. So I'm going to play Scrooge here first on the right, which will potentially let me push and double win this lane. They do play a second daughter here, which means that I don't feel like I'm going to win this at all. And so I can just Lost in the Woods so this Quetz doesn't stick around and our aloe vera gets more safe resupply value. Because now we're definitely winning the left, we're definitely not winning the right. They pass, and we can put something to sleep. Either the aloe vera or the Scrooge. I feel like I'm going to have a lot of cards in reserve, though. So I end up sleeping the Scrooge. But, you know, again, it's probably the right thing to just commit to this left side and keep the aloe vera around. That being said, we're going into this turn with a lot of power already on the board. But we did make it so that now they're discounting their reserve, which, again, if this was aloe vera instead, we'd be fighting over the right, but they'd be spending a lot more mana trying to do these things. And in fact, we're not even benefiting from this yet, unless I drop a harvest, which isn't going to be great into this Quetzalcoatl. But I'll start with a caregiver tent, let him get a soldier from the Quetzalcoatl, but at least we'll protect this aloe vera. We've now shuffled around our deck and are getting our Chiron back here. I'm probably at risk of not winning both lanes this turn, and so I'm now thinking about, okay, how do I make sure at least that I'm going into the tiebreaker with lots of power on the board? So I open with the Chiron to get a single resupply. I'll give him a token, but I'm just trying to see. I don't want to discard this aloe vera. This is exactly the kind of thing that I want to keep anchored around. So I won't boost anything. Instead, I will just plan on casting this aloe vera. They place their newness on the right. The right lane seems out of reach, so I'm going to just play the aloe vera on the left, hoping that this turn I can end up in a tie, go to the tiebreaker with my own power on the board. They beauty sleep us here. I'll do a tent first to stall out and see what their next play is in case it's another beauty sleep I need to be dodging. But they pass, which lets us just play the daughter on the left side to block their mountain power and head into the tiebreaker. We unfortunately don't have another anchor effect in our reserve, but we do have 2 anchored aloe veras going into this final round, and they have nothing. So even though we could have pushed more earlier on, we created such an advantage for ourselves that it didn't really matter. Like, we're going into this final turn, they've got nothing in play. We've got a ton of power on the board. They can maybe cast their beauty sleep to negate one of these, but that's 3 mana out of their pocket, and we've got a billion cards in hand. So I'll put back Persephone because I want to be fighting over water, and that makes the tiebreaker only water. Also makes me think about their own Persephones. Is this going to be a problem for me that I need to be aware of? But I'll start with lower cost plays to stall things out, which includes this Nuther Shroom on the right. Continue to put power on the board with things like Mowgli. And I'm not trying to go to another round, so I'm not going to use this for anchoring. I'm just going to play this as a 1 mana 3/2/2. Or 2 mana 3/2/2. Sorry, I do not have Ebenezer Scrooge in play because they have so many ways to gain benefit from that. But they themselves start putting out Cernunnos, and the writing's on the wall here when we put the beauty sleep out there. This, in fact, meets 1 beauty sleep from them, but that's really the end of the game. We've got a ton of power, they do not. And yeah, game 1 win for Ebenezer Rin. Okay, game 2 against Tasia. I still don't love Spindle against Muna, though maybe a little bit more against Tasia, where I expect to see more Beauty Sleeps, but I feel like it's more difficult for me to get the value out of this. So I'm going to put this back. I don't need this Harvest without an early Scrooge line. And in fact, I really like keeping these double Mowglis and the Capellia. And we can open with that, see how things go. We'll start with the Mowgli on one of the sides, and we'll only really play the Capellia out if I am not winning a lane with the Mowgli. I don't want to double advance and then overflow on my reserve by 2, which is what would happen here, because we'd be putting 2 cards in the reserve. So I'd rather say, hey, I'm not going to take this advance this turn, but I'm not going to throw away a lot of value by putting 4 cards into my reserve round 1. Now here, I do have the option of, do I want to put the Capellia into play and keep this Mowgli around? I'd rather keep the Capellia for more impactful things like Scrooge or Aloe Vera, though, or Daughter. So I'm not going to take that early bit of small value still, and instead I'll put the Persephone into the reserve. Which, I'm not sure what's correct, but that's what I did. Here, I've got lots of anchor effects already, and so I'll put the Moon Druid back, and hopefully wherever they play something, I can go the other lane with the Aloe Vera, which would be the right lane, it looks like, with their Aloe Vera coming in on the left. Here, I'm going to be overflowing. Definitely just going to put the Moon Merchant there and discard it. I'm not going to be able to put Capellia into reserve this turn because I'm not fighting over grass. Well, I could be if I played the Persephone, so maybe that's what I do. But for now, I'll put the Spindle into mana. Scrooge is interesting. I could go Scrooge, Persephone, and then end of turn Capellia, but they're also getting a 3/3/3 for 1 if I play out the Scrooge, so I'm not looking to rush him out. Instead, I'll just play the Persephone left and say, hey, we're fighting over grass now, and see how he responds. They play a second Spindle, which I'll push the advantage with this Mowgli on the left and see what they do. They Kodama, which I could play the Mowgli and still take left. Then I'd be winning left-right, Aloe Vera be coming back, and I would be overflowing with nothing sticking around. Alternatively, though, I could just use this Scrooge to sleep the Persephone and use the Mowgli to anchor the Aloe Vera so that I trade lanes here, but I'm going into a better position for the next round, including filling up my resources more. So I'm going to do that. I'm going to use Ebenezer to sleep the Persephone, keep it around. I'm not winning this lane. And the Mowgli will anchor the Aloe Vera, which feels pretty solid. One of the benefits we kind of see there is that Scrooge doesn't need to be doing Scrooge things. Like sometimes just sleeping something acts as an anchor effect that puts you into a good position. Here I'll get rid of the Moon Druid. The other cards in my hand are pretty strong, and that's one of the more awkward cards, though it is great to have its anchor effect sometimes. They play Aloe on right, which I can fight over the colors I care about with Sneezer Shroom, so I'll play that out. They play Spindle Harvesters on the left, and I'm currently advancing on the right and the left. They've got 1 mana left. I didn't think that I wanted to use this Lost in the Woods on one of these Spindles, but because it's giving 2 power here, which will actually let the Spindle Harvesters start resupplying at noon, I'm going to go and get rid of one of these. Use the mana while I can. I don't need to put more power on the board. I mean, I could use the Capellia to do that, but that's awkward just to block his lane when really I want to use this to anchor something. So I Lost in the Woods, his thing on the right. I can use this Mowgli to anchor the Aloe, and then I'll be going into the next round with a lot of stuff once again. They use this so to just get it into their reserves. They can start anchoring something next turn since both these things are sticking around. But we have 1 mana left, so we can use this Capella to anchor something, which will likely be the Persephone, and we're so far ahead. First treating the Capella. And then second, we can just hit the Persephone there so that it's a cheap play from reserve to let us push. Here, we don't see a Scrooge. Doesn't seem like we're doing Scrooge things in the traditional way this game, so I'll put the Harvest back. I'm going to be fighting over grass anyway, so I'll open up... Well, the Scrooge makes things interesting. I could Scrooge, see what they resupply. It's another spindle. They do have a mana reaping, which I don't want to discount for them while we currently have the resource advantage, so I'm going to continue thinking of this Scrooge as a way to sleep things that aren't going to be sticking around to win the lane. So I can open up with the Persephone on the right, say, hey, we're all fighting over grass here. They play a mana reaping, which I'm pretty satisfied with because it ramps us, and now at least we know what they wanted to do with it, which makes our decision making a little bit easier. And a snoozer from hand on the right, in case we want to sleep, will put us in a pretty strong advantage here on the right side. Interestingly, they don't end up using the anchor effect of the So, thinking that they need to keep that boost around, or at least thinking that they need to win this lane this turn because we're pushing hard over here. We'll buy some time with a tent on the left, expecting that we'll probably be playing the snoozer shroom or nothing at all. And they finish with a Ogun, which is interesting. We now aren't winning right or left, but they're going to be overflowing this turn. I can play the snoozer on the right to make sure that we're 1 point away, and then I can use, once again, the Scrooge's sleep ability on the left side so that we're going into the next turn with a lot of power, which is a good place to be. A lot of power, 3 power. It's a good amount. It's a good place to be when we only need to win 1 lane next turn. I'll put the Chiron here, and because he has these spindles, I'll get rid of the sleep. But Chiron can fight over the right here, and we have so much power on the left. This feels like a clean sweep for us. I'll keep things at a power, putting back the tent. They try to match our power on the right, but with this Moona Merchant, it's likely going to be enough to close them out, and indeed, they scoop, and yeah, that's the game. Okay, that's the games. Pretty sweet deck. Thank you, Freeloader, for sending me the list and letting me play it. Not sure what the next video is going to be yet, but thank you all for watching. Please consider subscribing if you are not already. And yeah, until next time, I remain Elio. Thanks for watching again.